The job market sucks right now. Lots of people are being made redundant. Many more are being furloughed. And just because you're furloughed now, that's no guarantee that your job will still exist or that you will still be needed in 2, 3, or 5 months' time. Competition just got much tougher. Let's face facts. The pyramid has always existed, in good times and bad. Now it's just got a lot steeper. Sympathy won't pay the rent or put food on your table. You need to earn. You need to do what you have to do to improve your chances. So what can you do? In good times and bad, good people have always got hired. But not all the good people have always got hired. So what makes the difference? How can you be different so that you do get hired or promoted or not made redundant? Or that you can at least improve your chances of getting hired, promoted, or not being made redundant? How can you stand out? I've worked with startups, PLCs, and global businesses in the US, Germany, and the UK. And I've run a small manufacturing group with 140 people. But before that, and long before I worked with TEDNet, I worked with what was then an up-and-coming former startup. In fact, it was one of the first PLCs I worked for. It's called SAP. One of the people I worked with during the 4 years I was coaching at SAP was a wonderful man called Peter, funny enough, who was international HR manager. He received mail every day, not email, physical mail, bundles of mail. He received unsolicited, without an advert being placed, over 200 speculative applications from outstanding candidates with first-class degrees every day. The applications kept coming, bundles of mail every day, 1,000 applications a week. He didn't have the problem of advertising or a shortage of applicants. His biggest problem, to choose and hire the 5 people a week we needed. What if I could help you improve your chances of standing out and getting a job? When coronavirus is screwing up the demand for jobs, standing out is hard. The pyramid has always been a thing. Now it's just got a lot steeper. The solution? Storytelling is the key to improving your chances of getting a job, winning a promotion, or avoiding redundancy. Of course, it's not a guarantee. There is no such thing as a silver bullet, least of all at the moment. There are very few companies hiring at the moment. So you need to make every chance you get count. Every interview must be a success. But if storytelling could help you get through one more hoop in the interview process, you'd be closer to the people who are authorized to say, "You're hired." That's right. The first people you speak to during the interview process are almost certainly not authorized to hire you. They're part of the filtering system. Which brings me to my first point. A story is memorable. Most of the interview process is there to exclude people, to sift people out, to get rid of applicants who can't add value quickly. Companies are not there to develop your skills. They are in the business, or at least the good ones are, of developing their own talent. But why hire somebody who's good but who needs training in a skill when you can hire somebody who has already got that skill? Companies are aiming for perfect, and imperfect will soon be screened out. One of my retainer clients sometimes gets me to sit in on interviews in the PR and marketing department as part of their initial sifting panel, though we often disagree. The communications director said to me once, he said, "Peter, you're a great coach, but you're a shockingly bad interviewer. Your skill is seeing and coaching potential, but we're not hiring for potential. We're hiring for next week and next month." Back to this word process, or more precisely, the hiring process. It's like a series of hoops, a bit like the Grand National, with people being excluded at every stage in the process. Some get excluded in the pre-paper sift. Some get excluded in the paper sift. Some get excluded at the telephone interview. Some get excluded because they fail social media background checks. Some get excluded at first interview. Some get excluded after they have delivered a presentation or met a director, or because their references or Google brought up a surprise. These stages often take weeks, and in professional services firms like law, accountancy, and consulting, there will almost always be at least 5 stages, sometimes more. During these multiple stages of the interview process, you will speak to a variety of different people, and usually the first people you speak to cannot make a decision to hire you. Their job is narrowing the field. excluding the question marks. Your job in the early stages is not to get them to hire you, but to get them to put you through to the next round. How do you do that? What are their criteria? There are many ways of doing this, but they all boil down to 2 or 3 basic questions. Can the candidate do the job, or do it very soon with minimal training? Would they fit in with us on a human level? Plus the third question, am I going to look dumb, or will I screw my credibility and my reputation internally by putting this person forward? So next time you are in an interview and you think the interviewer likes you, agrees with you, nods and smiles, that means nothing. It's not their decision. They are asking themselves those 3 questions. So they need to believe you and like you and believe in you and put you forward to the next stage. And then they need to justify why they have done that. You need to persuade them and give them the ability to briefly be able to sell you on. Retellability is everything. They need to remember you. Nobody remembers lists of claims and titles. A story is also dynamic. Data is dumb. You need to join up the data dots. I'm afraid that your skills and your degree won't get you a job unless there is a massive demand for a specific skill which outstrips supply and you have that particular skill. All the things you've studied will not get you the job. All they do is get you in the room. So they are not drivers, they are givens. I was running a small manufacturing group in Germany about 20 years ago, and I had to hire a particular position. And I was under extreme pressure to hire someone quickly. By law, the position needed to be filled by someone with a specific qualification, a Meister. It was a recession, so people were desperately looking for jobs. So on paper, it should have been easy. But people with that specific qualification were still in demand. And most people with that qualification either had a job or were running their own business and didn't want a job. So demand and supply were working against me despite there being a recession. So if you had that specific qualification, you got in front of me really fast. But that's not enough, is it? I wanted more, obviously. I needed somebody with that qualification who could also lead a team of 35, negotiate with suppliers, and be great with customers. I interviewed a lot of people with the technical qualifications of Meister, but I only hired number 8. Having that specific qualification got people in front of a decision maker fast, but it doesn't necessarily get them all hired. So a list of job titles and fancy qualifications alone are useless. They answer the "what have you done before" question, but companies are far more interested in the second question and the third question. What did you do with that title, that position, and how did you do it? Let's take 4 words, 4 arbitrary words: man, horse, cottage, city. Meaningless alone. What turns this from a simple collection of words into a story? Verbs. How about this? A man left his cottage and rode his horse into town. Now it's a mini sequence, a movie clip, memorable. So let's then apply that to your jobs. What did you do? What were the verbs? By the way, that's how memory champions learn and remember numbers. It's not because they remember numbers, they create stories in their heads based in connecting groups of numbers, which they connect via stories to other groups of numbers. The interviewers need to see a video in their heads of you, like that little movie clip. A man rode his horse from his cottage to the city. That's the basis for a video, but it's still not enough. Verbs are just not enough on their own. Stories are visual. They're not just dynamic, they're visual. And that makes them memorable. They have color and texture. So how do you take facts and give them color? You give them adjectives. What about a tall man, a dark horse, a thatched cottage, or is it a farmhouse or a rundown worker's cottage? See how different pictures pop up in your head? A big city, a dirty city, a shiny city. So what happens if we add a verb and some color to these 4 words? A desperate and hungry poor man put all that he owned into a dirty canvas rucksack and saddled up his tired horse and rode his horse away from his rundown worker's cottage in the wood towards the smoke and noise and danger of the dirty city, hoping to make his fortune. And as in all good films, something then happens. And we see what happens to the person and how they reacted and dealt with it. That's where the dramatic arc comes in. More about that on my website. Let me give you an example. I had a client. This wasn't a graduate interview client. This was a man who had had some important roles. And he wanted to go for a director role at a PLC. But he didn't have a degree, and to get to the next stage, to get to the next level, he wasn't qualified. On paper, it was a big step up, 2 ranks at least. We talked through his career, what jobs he had had, what he had done with them. And in one of his jobs, one that he'd almost forgotten, he'd been in charge of a major London train station when a massive disaster happened. He was relatively junior, but there was nobody else there, and he took control, and he ran that disaster without title or salary or position, purely because of the caliber of the person he was, and because he knew his job, and he knew that station, and he stepped up. Nobody else was there. He took control. His attitude and his abilities came together perfectly on a terrible day. When it came to his interview, he told that story that we'd worked on. He was hired at director level and has since gone on to a number of other senior roles in PLCs. Nobody asks about his degree anymore. His story is powerful, dynamic, and visual. It's retellable. So many people hide behind job lists or claims without telling any retellable, memorable, vivid stories like he did. But you might say, I haven't got enough time to tell all the stories I have. Well, actually, you only need to tell 1 or 2, maybe 3, but there must be stories that prove that you possess the key hiring criteria that they listed in the job description and the job advert. Or you might say, I don't have any stories to tell, I'm just fresh out of university. But we need to find stories that prove while you don't have years of work experience, you do have the right attitude and the ability to learn quickly. The panel needs to not just remember you and see you in a movie, they need to feel and hear and see the texture and the color and the emotion and the attitude, your attitude in your stories. Storytelling helps you stand out in interviews by bringing your CV to life, making you and your story memorable, and getting further along the interview process and closer to someone who can say, you're hired. So what to do next? To help you stand out in interviews, there are over 50 articles on storytelling for interviews on my website, peterpotting.co.uk, including what to do in a telephone interview, what questions to ask the interviewer, how to prepare for an interview, and what not to do in an interview. Why don't you go and have a look? In the meantime, good luck. Thanks very much.